The winter holidays are just 2 months away. In this episode of Doin the Most, we're gonna make aged eggnog. This recipe will go a lot better if you've got a stand mixer like this KitchenAid here. Hit that affiliate link in the description to get one for yourself. So first off, the list of ingredients. 2 quarts half and half, 12 egg yolks, 6 egg whites, 1 quart whole milk, 1 pound powdered sugar, 3 cups brandy, 1 cup bourbon, 2.5 teaspoons nutmeg, and a half teaspoon of salt. You'll need to crack a dozen eggs and separate the whites from the yolks. You can see here that I'm pretty good at it. Unfortunately, I was all out of eggs and had to use fresh ones, so the inner membrane was still fairly strong. This made separating the shells into halves and using the halves to separate the whites from the yolks kind of difficult, but I powered through. Half the egg whites went to the dog, Sam, who was very appreciative of that gift. The only times in my life I've cracked a dozen eggs at once are making eggnog, and when I used to go camping with about 10 guys after high school football games about 2 decades ago. Squirrel and scrambled eggs was a pretty popular breakfast. The yolks go in and begin whisking until smooth. Then we'll begin slowly adding that pound of powdered sugar. It's important here to use powdered sugar rather than granulated sugar because the texture of powdered sugar allows it to incorporate into the egg yolks quite a bit better. With regular granulated sugar, it can take a long time for that grittiness to whisk out, and that can add too much air to your yolks, throwing off the texture when you start trying to mix in the other ingredients. You'll want to go slow here so it all incorporates gradually. And you'll see here that it kind of comes together as a big eggy mess of goop in the bottom of your bowl. This process is possibly the most difficult to do without a stand mixer, and you'll really build up some forearm strength if you're whisking this all by hand. If you're going to do this by hand, I would recommend doing this with a friend. While this is going, you're going to want to measure out your booze. This is a 4-cup measuring cup, so it made measuring the 3 cups of brandy and then the 1 cup of bourbon fairly simple. You can see me checking my phone here and there throughout this video. I'm making sure I'm adhering to my recipe, which was actually adapted from a Reddit user who shared their eggnog recipe years ago. And while it's out, pour one for the house. Scrape and whisk, scrape and whisk. And then once it's all smooth, we'll begin to add the booze. In a minute. Do this very slowly at first, like teaspoons at a time. The key here is to do this gradually because we do not want those egg yolks to curdle under the stress of being bombarded with too much alcohol all at once. Gradually. 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 And once you're sure the eggs won't curdle, you can pour more steadily. And once that's all incorporated, which it comes together quick, once it's all incorporated, you will add your 2 quarts of half and half. could only find these in 1 pint containers. Generally, I have whole quarts of half and half in my fridge because my significant other drinks that rather than milk. But maybe it was the season, I don't know. The grocery store was all out of large containers of half and half. Once all that's in, you will be adding 1 quart of milk. And by this point, if you are using a stand mixer, it's probably getting pretty full. Fortunately, we're going to transfer this to another vessel. Be careful when popping that bowl out of your mixer. I only had 1 big pot available, so here's your introduction to Mega Pot. You can't see it here, but I'm running this through a wire strainer because the stand mixer sometimes can't get a couple of those last little strings of egg out of the bottom. Clean everything up, plop your 6 egg whites in and whip those to stiff peaks. You can do this on a fairly fast speed. And while we've got time, let's use that to measure out our salt, adding directly to the egg white mixture. And then you're going to ideally run half of a nutmeg over your microplane. And you should do that until you can measure out 2.5 teaspoons of ground nutmeg. And again, right into the whipped egg whites. Here's your obligatory cross section, because I thought it looked cool. Scrape once, whisk to completion, and you're gonna fold/stir that into the booze mixture. Your goal is to incorporate it as best you can. Whipping the egg whites is only adding air to get some separation between the molecules so you don't get those weird strings of white in your eggnog. All those bubbles will eventually disappear as you both bottle it and as it ages. You'll get to see Mega Pot in another upcoming video as I use this pot to caramelize honey for a burnt honey mead called a bochet. That's coming soon. So this part ain't pretty, and I usually do this in the sink, so you get to see here the amount of mess I can truly make. This should net you 5 or so 1-liter swing top bottles. I'm sparing some to crown cap in this little blue bottle as well. And the goal is really just to try to evenly distribute the batch across the bottles so they get relatively the same mix in each bottle, because you can have some thicker and some thinner throughout your batch. So if you're pouring it into each bottle, you're going to mix that batch more effectively across all of your bottles. Clean them up, pop them in the fridge, and age for 6 weeks minimum to ensure that any gut upsetting buggies have been destroyed by the alcohol. The blue bottle is gonna go in the back of my fridge and will be making an appearance about a year from now. I'll do a video on that once I crack that one open and taste test it next year. We've got more videos coming, including some spent grain dog treats made from the spent grain from a batch of mead. We've got blended lemonade and a barley wine bochet burnt mead coming up too. So stay tuned for all of that. Hopefully you'll like our channel and subscribe, and we look forward to bringing you more Doin the Most content in the near future.